Good evening and welcome from above the Caribbean Sea. My name is Craig Winn, and I am the host of the Yahowah blog. This episode is the continuation of the first volume of a series entitled Coming Home. This is the voice of God through that series, and we are now in the final or 11th chapter of this book. Should you want to read it for yourself, and I would encourage you to do so, the entire book is available free at YadaYah.com. You can read it as a page turner, which is kind of fun. It's an interesting way to read a book online or on your cell phone or television, tablet, or computer, however you prefer. But every book also comes in a PDF so that you can go through it that way. Or if your preference is to do as I'm doing and to actually hold a book in your hands, you can go to Amazon.com and buy any of the 35 books that are part of the YadaYah series. This group of books, volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Coming Home, and I'm completing volume 4 now, which has the most magnificent plot twist ever recorded by the greatest of authors, Yahowah, speaking of his relationship with his beloved son and how the very fate of the human race would pivot on a surprise intervention. It is a flashback of magnificent proportions. But all of these volumes are focused primarily on Dowd and the man God chose to reestablish the kings, the messiahs, the Son of God's, and our Savior's reputation. You see, over the past 3,000 years, since the end of Dowd's first of 3 lives, and certainly over the last 2,000 years since Dowd fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, in the second of 3 lives, there hasn't been one person on the planet who has properly credited the King, our Messiah and Savior, the very Son of God, for what he had achieved. And if you don't know what Dowd did, there's no way for God to save you. Cannot be done. Because Dowd alone fulfilled the means that God has to provide the benefits of the covenant for those who were aware of what those first 3 spring mikra actually represent and how they are delivered to those who accept the terms and conditions of the covenant. So this indeed is a exceedingly important presentation. Now, I will tell you that if I slip in and out and don't seem to be quite as focused as I'd like to normally be aware that I am now trying to flesh out one of the most amazing insights that, well, you can even possibly imagine. And it covers the entirety of the Towrah, prophets, and Mizmowr to get it done because the clues were strewn throughout. And the ultimate conclusion in all of this, and that one that I will share with everyone as soon as I have made enough progress in the commentary and translations of all of this material, is that even God can't save us if we don't engage and make a contribution to the covenant relationship that he intends. God can't save anyone that isn't willing to make an ongoing contribution to his family. You see, the covenant has been established as a mutually beneficial relationship. And a one-sided relationship is an oxymoron. They're counterproductive. God's not looking for a dependent. He's not looking for someone who relishes entitlements. He doesn't want to spend his eternity with someone who hasn't even bothered to get to know who he is, that will believe all manner of lies about him, like Jesus Christ. God says emphatically, I'm not a man. And yet, the most popular religion in the world would reduce God to a man. They would even have men empowered to kill God. Why would you trust a God who men can kill with your life? It is stunning what we have done. And this idea that God will save those who believe is utter nonsense. God has made the decision that once he created humankind, that he would only engage with humankind and that there would be expectations for us. God's great. He did not solicit our advice during creation and obviously didn't need it. There was no consult with man in authoring the DNA code for life. God was on his own, and he's independent of us. He exists independently of man. But once God made man in his image, and he decided that he wanted to form a relationship with us, well, everything changed. He was no longer able to just act on his own. He would need us to participate for there to be a beneficial, mutually desirable relationship. And I'm going to tell a story that shows that even God's beloved Son, when he checked out of the relationship, he rendered himself incapable of saving himself, much less the rest of us. And that is why the most important intervention of all took place. And I will share the situation with you and why God chose to do it this way and why God couldn't resolve this problem with his Son any other way. God has limitations. Once he created man for the purpose of a relationship, he put himself in a situation where he's limited in what he can and cannot do. And I think he rather likes those limitations because either we get it right or there's no reason to continue. And so the purpose of these shows will be to help you get it right so that you know who Yahowah is, what he's offering, and importantly, what he's expecting from us in return. And I will assure you, it isn't religious obedience. It isn't faith. And the answer can't be found in any political or religious scheme. As a matter of fact, you have to leave both. Disassociate yourself from both to even have a chance to benefit from what God's offering. So this is a very profound thought, and we will pursue it over these next few shows. Now, as we begin the 11th chapter of what is the series, the first volume of the series, Coming Home, what you recognize is that Yahweh's name, beyond all others, is magnificent. So in the previous chapter, which I concluded, I think it was 2 days ago, as we were trying to work out a different studio setup here in the Ocean Studio in a more relaxed and comfortable way on a love seat that we had set up for the purpose. We concluded our review of not only the 89th Mizmowr, which is the greatest song ever written, a song where Yahowah affirms that his beloved son is Dowd, David, and none other. where he affirms emphatically that his chosen one is Dowd, and therefore not Jesus. Where he says emphatically that the Messiah is Dowd, and therefore there is no Mr. Christ. Where he says that the exemplar of the covenant and the means to deliver the benefits of that covenant, which is the gift of eternal life and the removal of our guilt so we can be adopted into God's family, enriched and empowered by him, essentially saved, and so much more, that all that took place because of what he accomplished in his collaboration with Dowd, his co-worker. So I would say that the previous discussion was easily the most cathartic in our journey, exuberant with the news about Dowd. And with the good news that the Son of God and Messiah had done what needed to be accomplished for us to engage in a relationship with God. But tragic in the recognition that Jews and Christians alike have denied his magnanimous sacrifice, and to such an extent that the truth now seems incredulous. When I tell people Dowd is the Messiah, he is the former and returning king, he is the chosen one, he is the very Son of God, all according to God, and that he served as the Passover lamb and on Matzah carried our guilt into Sheol, so we would appear innocent before God and therefore could be adopted into his family on Bikuwrym. They say, oh, come on, no, Dowd's dead and buried, can't be. Well, according to God, that's the truth. And then when you say what that also means is there was no Mr. Christ. Never existed. The one who was crucified on Passover was Dowd. And religion has buried the truth under such a pile of rubbish that it's done irreparable harm. Now, fortunately, it's not too late to know and to embrace the truth. In the decade remaining prior to their return, humankind has one last opportunity to discover who Yahowah is and what Dowd has done. We're just 7.5 years away now from the final remnant gathering in Jerusalem and being presented before God. And once we realize what Father and Son are offering and asking in return, we're prepared to join the covenant and enter heaven. So with ample opportunity to learn from the Towrah, the Nabi, the prophets, and the Mizmowr, let's continue our journey. So at this juncture, there are scores of places that, of course, I would like to explore, but before we chart a new course, let's continue a while longer on the path that we have been navigating. It will assuredly lead us to the purpose of our quest, which is to be right about God. After all, God says what matters most is being Tsadaq, right. So after the exhilarating rush of the 6th, 7th, and 89th Mizmowr, I'd like to share the 8th. It's appropriate too, because this is my 8th anniversary of my marriage to my lovely Leah, someone who is the subject of the final word picture, Mashal, the 31st, which we will share in due time. To the enduring guide and everlasting director, Natash, the continuously glorious and majestic conductor and every endeavor over an unlimited period of time based upon the Githya, the wine press, the idea or instrument associated with preparing grapes for wine. This is a Mizmowr, a melody with lyrics, a song to be sung. It is by Dowd, the beloved. Mizmowr, lyrics to sing, Psalm 8, that is the introduction and dedication. Now, one of the many reasons we know that the beloved Son of God recognized that Yahowah's Towrah was a source of teaching and instruction, guidance, and direction is because he dedicated many of his Mizmowr songs to the enduring guide and everlasting director. While seldom acknowledged, Nishak speaks of God, not man, as it is addressing the one who is constantly and continuously glorious and majestic. A conductor is a guide for every endeavor. He directs our steps for an unlimited duration of time. And there is only one such individual, Yahowah. And I said it refers to the Towrah because the Towrah is comprised of directions and guidance. Dowd composed 3 Mizmowr, which began by referencing the winepress. In conjunction with the Sukkah, which is the final of the 7 Moedim, camping out with our Heavenly Father, being sheltered with Him. These include the 8th, the 81st, and the 84th. And I suspect that the reasons were many, including the realization that Dowd was given the responsibility of cultivating Yahweh's vineyard. Now, other reasons may include the fact that while good wine caresses the palate, for it to blossom, the vines from which it is harvested must be chosen based upon what they're capable of producing. They must be tended with care. Their grapes must be pressed to be productive, and the resulting wine must be allowed to mature under the proper conditions. When wine is consumed responsibly, it is a wonderful accompaniment to an evening meal. At the same time, consumed irresponsibly, it is capable of incapacitating judgment, especially of the unrestrained. Dowd's name defines his place in Yahweh's universe, in his Towrah, and it is now raining on me. So let's hope that it stays light, or else we're going to need to cover our equipment. And so I'm going to let you get the larger of our tarps ready, my friend. And if we need to, we will cover this quickly, because even the Wookiee was there on us on the sofa, and he says, I don't want to get wet. So we'll continue as long as we can. I'm drip dry, so it doesn't bother me, but we do have a small fortune in equipment here that we would prefer not to get wet. So not only does Dowd name mean beloved, it describes the one who loves so passionately that he is adored in return. And it is based upon a root which means to boil. And that is interesting in and of itself. No matter how polluted water is, it is purified by boiling. Steeped in these words, we are similarly cleansed. The hotter the water, the greater the energy. Enormous machines are powered by steam. So this speaks of our transition from limited physical beings to vastly more energetic spiritual ones. Not only is water, therefore, symbolic in all of these ways, but it's also the source of life, its most essential ingredient. And steam produces energy produces steam, I should say, when energy is added. But maybe that's reminiscent of the Spirit, who Dowd had the benefit of having lived within him. Also, as we consider the wine press, one of the things that we discover through the 89th, through the 31st Mashal, is that it is likely that Dowd reached a point in his life where the pressures grew great, and he did what so many have done before. And in his time, very few people could actually drink water. It's one of the reasons why Dowd was so excited at one moment that he sent people off just to bring a cup of water from where he grew up, raising sheep in Bethlehem, because water could not be consumed around a city of people. And what you had to do to survive and for a community to thrive, is to make wine or beer, because the process of fermenting wine or beer would create the alcohol that killed the pathogens. And so it's what everyone drank, and we have to drink to live. It's quite likely, however, that there was a period of time when Dowd drank wine to excess. So it's also interesting that we have a Mizmowr devoted to that wine vat and wine press. So knowing where these Mizmowr lead, it is also relevant to recognize that being Tsadaq right, something Dowd was recognized for God for being at very important times of his life, is what leads to God's reciprocation. In other words, Dowd was loved because Dowd was right. It is vital to our approach to God and to his testimony. That doesn't mean that God can't love his son and didn't love his son when his son was wrong. It's just that their relationship wasn't right when he was wrong. Now, the author of this song, Yahowah's adored friend, close companion, and admired associate, more than anyone, was recognized by Yahowah, and he loved Yahowah's name. That's sad in one place that I was trying to ascertain the success or failure of an intervention in Dowd's life at a terrible time where he really wallowed in shame. And it's the only point where he was so embarrassed and so off his footing by what he had done and what he had been told about his mistakes that he couldn't even say Yahowah's name. He has an entire psalm where God's name isn't mentioned. But that's rare for him. Almost all of his psalms would celebrate God's name. It's one of the reasons why when I read this one, it's the 51st. I knew that Dowd had yet to return to where he needed to be right with God. But this one, that is not the case. This is the 8th, and it begins as it should, Yahowah. Now, that's an accurate transliteration of the name of our God, guided by his Towrah instructions and his Haya existence, particularly pursuant to our Shalom reconciliation. He says, Edon, our upright pillar and firm foundation, our mighty and upright one, our reliable base and pedestal in the center of our tent of the witness, which sustains and enlarges us, making us secure. How? From Ma, an interrogative. How awesomely magnificent, powerful and majestic, superior and splendid, stately and sovereign, noble and beautiful, desirable and grand, suitable and recognizable, respectful and relational. It's from Adar. Glorious and honorable is your name. To my Jewish friends, God's name is not Hashem. God's name is not Adonai. God's name isn't G-D. God's name is known. It is easily pronounced, and it's easily shown that that is the proper pronunciation. In fact, I've just shared with you the two words. In fact, if you wanted to take it to 3, I shared all 3 that by themselves affirm the pronunciation of Yahowah as such. Haya, the basis of his name, means to exist. Towrah, the book in which his name is introduced to us, where the O sound is from the Hebrew Wah. And Shalom, what the Towrah delivers, what Yahowah's name delivers, where the O sound in Shalom is also from the Hebrew Wah. So this opening line continues throughout the land, which to show the way to the benefits of the relationship. Asher, you and I have chosen to bestow your glory. Nathan, Hod, Atah, we concur that you should offer to magnanimously give as a manifestation of your power and authority, called imperative, paragogic, cohortative. first person expression of volition, beyond the spiritual realm. So Psalm 8:1. Let me read that without so many interruptions, and then we'll talk a bit about what was just said. It begins with Yahowah. Yahowah, our upright pillar and firm foundation, how awesomely magnificent is your name. Throughout the land, which to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, I have chosen, and you want to bestow your glory beyond these spiritual realms. In fact, if we look at this, the imperative and the cohortative were both used. The imperative is an expression of second person volition, while the cohortative is an expression of first person volition. It's one of Dowd's signatures is to include both first and second person volition in the same verb. The paragogic would say emphatically. So to accommodate that, what is being said here, because Nathan is the verb, it means to give, to bestow, to offer. And he is therefore saying that he and Yahowah are of like mind. They both want to do the same thing. That you have chosen and I desire. That you and I agree that it's appropriate to give, to offer, to bestow your glory beyond this spiritual realm, which would mean in our material realm. The creator of the universe and our God is offering us his name, not just so that we can come to know him, but so that we can attach it to our own and we can share it with others. Now, this is as a bride does with her husband's name, revealing that they are now part of the same family. The intent is that they will then share their surname with their children. Unlike the rest of us whose names were picked by our parents, Yahowah chose his name. It expresses characteristics that he wants to share. We know this because he expressed it some 7,000 times in his revelation to us. We would do well to respect his choice and appreciate the reasons behind it. Now, based upon this declaration, the dumbest, indeed the most irrational and counterproductive thing any of us could do would be to disrespect Yahowah's name by ignoring it, rejecting it, or replacing it with the titles God, Lord, Hashem, Adonai, or worse. Those who would claim God does not care what you call him so long as we speak to him would be dead wrong. In a medley of psalms devoted to the choice between Rasha, wrong, and Tsadaq, right, this is the fulcrum upon which our fate pivots between life and death. Now, in this regard, father and son are of like mind. Throughout this Mizmowr and other songs like it, Dowd offers Yahowah's name, giving it as a gift to his people. And since Dowd does so and is in full accord with Yahowah's thinking in this matter, it means that the rabbis who avoid Yahowah's name are wrong. They're in opposition to God. In this situation, Dowd is aware that Yahowah's name and reputation are well known in the spiritual realms, beyond our three-dimensional world. And so father and son have decided that it's appropriate for Yahowah's name and reputation to become as well known here on earth as they are in the heavens. That is the purpose of this series of books. This one's called Observations, but they're all under the Yahowah umbrella. Yada means to know. Yahowah is God's name. There are 35 of these books, all available free at YadaYah.com. Avail yourself of them. Do as Dowd suggested. YadaYahowah. To make this so, and so that we would know, Dowd is conveying Yahweh's name everywhere he travels and with every song he writes. It is a worthy example that we'd be wise to emulate. Now, we have covered this ground before, and it bears repeating since the title appears frequently throughout Yahweh's testimony. The Torah defines Edom as the upright pillar of the tabernacle. It is the firm basis and established foundation. It's a strong column and a reliable pedestal that's placed in the center of the tent of the restoring witness. And it's there to sustain, secure, and enlarge this very special place for us to meet with God. It is only in defiance of these implications that the same four letters were vocalized as Adon and then defined as Lord and Master. When directed at Yahweh, it's his Torah's definition that matters, not man's extrapolations. Just because we've heard Lord used so many times that it rolls off the tongue effortlessly, just because we are living in times where we are less familiar with the purpose and value of the center support pillar of a large tent enclosure, doesn't give us the license to go down the easy road. Upright pillar is unnatural to our ears, only because of religious influences defining the culture in which we have been indoctrinated. Whether it is scribed ma, or simply that would be with the H, the hey in Hebrew, or simply ma with the ah sound supplied, this is our clue to search for answers, especially to questions that began how, who, what, where, why, and when. Questions which should be pondered regarding what follows. And in this case, Dowd is encouraging us to consider the Edir, the superior, suitable, and splendid, the stately and sovereign, recognizable and relational nature of Yahweh's awesomely magnificent name. There are few endeavors that are more rewarding. It's one of the ways that we can express our respect for Yah. Knowing his name is the first step in getting to know him. Let's take this realization to its natural conclusion, shall we? Do not trust anything anyone has to say about God who does not know and use his name. That includes the entirety of the Christian New Testament, all Christian doctrine, the words of the rabbis, including their Talmud, the Quran, or any Bible translation that substitutes the Lord for Yahweh. Even in translation, but especially in interpretation, Yahweh needs to be known, to be understood, and to be respected for their result being that more people are Tsadaq right than Russia wrong. That is our goal. It's Yahweh's goal. It was Dowd's goal. Now, in the pictographic alphabet of ancient Hebrew, God drew his name by showing his hand. He is reaching down and out to us as a father to lift us up as his children. His hand is open because he wants to grasp hold of ours. It is the way parents lift up their children, encourage them to walk, keep them from falling, letting them know that we love them and that they can rely upon us, that we're here to guide them, just as Yahweh leads us, even protects us with his hand as well. In the original alphabet, the two letters which are repeated in Yahweh's name, they're He's. They were drawn to represent two individuals standing up, reaching up, and looking up to Yahweh. Now, there are numerous individuals that these could represent as pairs. I don't think there's any chance that they would represent Adam and Chawah because God was so disappointed in Adam, and Yahowah spoke her mind, but what she had to say was counter to God's intent. Abraham and Sarah are a natural choice, but Abraham was a bit of a scallywag at times. He pimped Sarah out several times to increase the size of his flocks. And Sarah, well, I think she's charming, and God clearly loved her. She doesn't say a whole lot. She's best known for actually laughing at God. So I don't think that's likely either. I would say that the most likely is actually the two individuals that Yahowah spoke of in Bereshith Genesis 1 as the greater and lesser luminaries, as the two people that represent the two trees in the garden, the tree of lives and the tree of knowledge. I think that's the most likely scenario. But you're free to make your own conclusions. The intervening letter between the two hays depicts a tent peg, an essential part of an ancient home and tabernacle, because with it, they are enlarged and secured. It is what Yah did for Adam in creating the garden. It is then what he did for Abraham and Sarah as he increased the size of their family and led us towards the covenant family. And while there might be a tendency to think that the two hays could depict the liberator, Moshe, I don't think that is the case, because God was exceedingly pleased with his contribution, is absolutely retired. So do not allow the tendency to think of a tent peg as antiquated, as temporary, or even unsophisticated to cloud your appreciation of how and why this letter was chosen. The earth itself is but a temporary home, a place for Yahowah to camp out with his children. It is the perfect way to depict the experience encapsulated in Sukkah, which means to camp out, which is where we're headed. And God wants to return the earth to the conditions experienced in Eden, where we camp out for 1,000 years, giving an opportunity to prove that we can be trusted. Moreover, with Yahowah, the fullness of time exists forever, with the past serving as a reflection of our future, with Eden depicting Sukkah. We have come from where we are headed to. Even with the apparent unsophistication of a tent peg, compared to a mighty cathedral, the comparison reveals Yahowah's nature and his preference. Moreover, Awah conveys inclusion and addition, and it talks about bringing man and God together in an inclusive way, each adding to the other. Yes, indeed. Doesn't it show Yahowah's preference? In the 7th chapter of 2 Samuel, Dowd's sitting there, and he's in his special home, might even be called a palace, in the city of Dowd, Jerusalem. And he's speaking to Nathan, who is a prophet. And he said, I'm living here in this wonderful house of cedar, and God's out in a tent. I think I need to build a house of cedar for God. And God then speaks through Nathan, because he and Dowd were on the outs at this point. They had some, Dowd made some mistakes that he ought not have made. And God just says, do you think I'm that into fancy houses? I've been living in a tent ever since I came to remove the children of Israel from Mitzrayim in Egypt. And I've continued to exist in that tent. And I've never complained, never asked for you to build me a house. And what God is saying is his business as our Father to build houses for us, not the other way around. And God's not the least bit concerned as to what his quarters are here on earth, because he's a 7-dimensional construct and heaven is quite expansive. So affirming all of this, Yad, the first letter in Yahowah's name, it means hand in Hebrew and depicts an individual's influence and their ability. Hey means to pay attention, to look up, and to be observant. These are the letters that are repeated in God's name, and the Wah is the single most common word in the Hebrew language and the Hebrew text as well, serving as the conjunction and. It joins ideas and individuals together, adding to them. Now, don't be misled by those who would have you believe that no one knows how to pronounce Yahweh's name, or worse, that it shouldn't be pronounced out of respect for it. The four letters in Yahweh's name, the Yod, the He, the Wah, and the He, are all vowels. That means they're open mouth sounds, and they are pronounced consistent with the verb which Yahweh told Moshe defines his name, YadaYah. And his Towrah is where we read this, where the Wah and the He are both pronounced Towrah. And that's all we need to say Yahweh. With these realizations obvious and irrefutable, those who have misused religious authority to rob believers of these insights over the ages, disrespectfully removing Yahweh's name, erasing it from his own testimony, appallingly replacing it with what you might conclude is the adversary's depiction, the Lord, they have done so to anger God. That's a terrible crime, and perhaps the most damaging ever committed, because God says that it is unforgivable in the third statement that he etched in stone. In order of relevance, it could be accurately stated that the focus of YadaYah, the series of books, 35 of which are free at YadaYah.com, over the past 24 and a half years, and the thousands of audio and vlog programs in the Yahowah blog that have been produced to share and expose them, have been to reacquaint the world with Yahweh's name, first and foremost, to share his Towrah guidance and instruction, his teaching, and to reveal the terms and conditions of his Bereth covenant. They're all published under the umbrella of YadaYah, to know Yahweh. Quite simply, our priorities are as they should be: Yahweh and Dowd, Towrah and Bereth, Mikre and Yisrael. Collectively, they are the essence of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, particularly the joy experienced in Eden. They are the means to enlightenment and enrichment, knowledge and understanding as well. So according to Dowd, Yahweh's name is not only beautiful and desirable, it is magnificent and magnanimous. It's a gift that Father and Son have chosen to bestow so that we might know it and benefit from the path that they have provided to get the most out of life. The majestic nature of the universe, from the spiral galaxies and the material realms to the seven dimensions of heaven. It's all a manifestation of Yahweh's power and glory. And so much of this is encapsulated in his name. Even as infants in our Heavenly Father's family, we ought to know his name. It is the foundation upon which his home and our lives are constructed. The text of the 8th Mizmowr continues, out of the mouths and oral expressions of children and infants, you have laid a foundation of power and strength which can withstand anything. This is in order to put a stop to the adversary who is trying to control, to constrain, and to diminish you, this hostile force who brings trouble by being antagonistic toward you, as well as to hold the guilty accountable by punishing the perpetrator. Mizmowr, lyrics to sing 8:2. Now, there is tremendous power in Yahweh's name. With it, We stand on a firm foundation and can withstand any assault. When we embrace it and accept all that Yahowah represents, there is no adversary who can harm us. We become Satan's most effective foes. Of course, enormously irritating to the religious, but they are actually worshiping Satan and don't know it. We are empowered to take on mankind's most deceitful, deadly, and damning institutions, both religious and political, when we wield Yahweh's name. All who enter the covenant family arrive as infants in the relationship. We are just beginning our lives as Yahweh's children, flush with exuberance and potential. We are afforded an everlasting opportunity to learn, to explore, to experience life together, and to grow, which is the intent of it all. And yet, even with the newly adopted having been part of God's family for a relatively short period of time, the fact is that we were sufficiently informed and rational to have chosen to be part of God's family. And ultimately, that qualifies us to speak out. That is what Dowd is affirming here. Yahweh's children are the most effective witnesses on earth, regardless of how long we've been in the covenant, although we get better as we mature. Further, once born into the Bereth on Bikuwrym, as a result of Pesach and Matzah, well, we become invincible. We're enriched and empowered such that during Shabuah, we're re-energized and emancipated, filling us with O's, or Oz if you prefer it pronounced as it was in the movie, with the strength to withstand anything. Yahowah wants us to follow his example and to take a stand against those things which are adversarial, especially religion, government, militarism, and conspiracy. They don't just ruin lives, they condemn them. Now, whether it's the sun, the stars, or king worshiping pagans of ancient cultures and civilizations, the advocates of the godless existence of progressives, the replacement man god of Christianity, the Catholic Church exercising undeserved authority, or rabbis substituting their Talmud for Yahweh's Towrah, mankind has been trying to diminish the one true and living God with all manner of impostors, extinguishing lives in the process. Fortunately, Yahweh is going to hold them accountable. Those who claimed to be God or to be authorized to represent him will be judged and convicted by him. The primary reason that religion and politics, militaries, and legal systems exist is to intimidate and control the masses. Free will and access to truth are constrained, making it infinitely more difficult to know God. Yahowah therefore views them as antagonistic, and he wants his covenant children to put a stop to them. Then he wants us to hold the purveyors of religion and politics accountable, pursuing them with a vengeance because of the damage they do. Judaism and Christianity are both moronic, especially when it comes to forgiving versus judging, tolerating versus condemning. To forgive the religious for depriving billions of souls of the opportunity to know Yahowah and to enter heaven is a crime that must have a punishment associated with it, just as murderers and thieves are held accountable. Neither an individual, institution, nor nation can be just, moral, fair, rational, or compassionate without condemning hurtful behavior that deprives others of life or liberty. And as the ultimate judge, Yahowah wants us to follow his example. We are to aggressively expose and condemn everyone and anything in opposition to Yahowah, Yisrael, the Torah, the covenant, and especially to God's beloved son, Dowd. The reason Judaism preaches tolerance is that Jews have been victimized by racial persecution more than any other people. although that's changing because the Haredi are intolerant of everyone, even of Jews. The reason that Christians claim tolerance and forgiveness is because their God is capricious, and they are afraid that if they judge, that they will be judged, although they have no problem judging those who expose and condemn the fallacious nature of their religion. There is very little affinity between Christian denominations and the acrimony against those whose lifestyles they reject. So they're hypocrites in that regard. It will be entertaining to see popes, Caesars, and pharaohs grovel, and yet there will be great sadness knowing how many souls they poisoned and abused, the consequence of their lies. In many ways, Dowd's proclamation in Mizmowr 8:12 serves as a prophetic affirmation of the promise Yahweh made as Moshe and the children of Israel sang the Song of the Sea at the conclusion of the Exodus. Then at this time and place, Moshe, the one who draws out the children of Israel, sang this song designed to teach, conveying the intent of Yahowah. They expressed in words, I will sing, lifting up my voice while traveling on a journey of discovery to behold and to approach Yahweh, because he should be appreciated for having stood up majestically to the war stallion and to their riders, casting them into the sea. That was Shemoth, names. 15:1, also called Exodus. Yahweh is my source of strength, my means to empowerment, my fortification and protection, the one whom I can rely upon because he never changes, my source of boldness and courage, making me capable and the best I can be, empowering and enriching me. He has become and always will be my means to approach, to be delivered and liberated, even saved. This is my God. And so I will express words which are appropriate and laudable regarding him. Then I will dwell in his beautiful home. My Father's God will lift me up on high with him, and I will be raised by him, increased, empowered, and enriched by him. Shemoth 15:2, if they had only remembered these words. Yahweh is a nurturing and confrontational individual, a fighter and the living embodiment of the provision, an aggressively challenging being, a defensive and protective person, and an engaging and salty example of masculinity. Yahweh is his name, his personal and proper designation. He's the fullness of all of these things. 15:3. You are right. Yahweh, splendid and glorious, extremely impressive in authority and ability and power and might, unchanging and therefore dependable. You choose that which is right. You are right. And being on your right side crushes and destroys the adversarial foes. 15:6. Now, even more explicit in this regard, Moshe stated, it is for me to retaliate and inflict retribution, as well as restitution and repayment. For the time their stance caused such staggeringly unfavorable circumstances. For near is the day of their destruction. Their fate is necessary, and it will come without hesitation upon them. Of course, was Debating Words. That was the 32nd chapter. The more we've studied human history, the more the story of civilization and our horrid propensity to subjugate and torment our fellow man throughout history, politically and religiously, militarily and economically, we discovered that there is a common denominator, a constant and repetitive pattern that is institutionalized in human influence, pervasive corruption, and the universal abuse of power. Individual stories of those who have been deliberately misled, oppressed, and tormented are anguishing and exasperating. The fact is that individual men and women can be good or bad, but collectively, humanity is almost always bad. The larger the organization, the worse we become. If the perpetrators of this malevolent conspiracy between religion, the political doctrines, the military and economic leaders hadn't been held accountable, then there is no justice. Their victims deserve to witness those they were powerless to stop, particularly for the hellacious crimes they perpetrated. And since the God who inspired these words is just, he will personally assure that the guilty are held accountable. The lack of forgiveness in this circumstance does not demonstrate that the Torah's God isn't merciful, but instead reveals that by being intolerant of the one who is harmful, he is demonstrating his capacity for compassion to those they have abused. Moreover, the all-loving, all-forgiving God of the Christian New Testament is a myth, a capricious and duplicitous divinity crafted in the image of the men who conceived him. Rather than the Christian Jesus being the solution, he's a counterproductive fabrication, as was Rabbi Akiva's Bar Kokhba. Mankind's heinous behavior isn't just an artifact of ancient history, because it's every bit as prevalent today, especially among the religious, the overtly political, and of course the conspiratorial. And to an increasing degree, the principal victims continue to be Jews. While anti-Semitism is a legacy of Imperial Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, and of course exacerbated by Islam, it has become rampant among Marxists and progressives in academia throughout the Protestant Church and also among nationalists. The propensity to bash and blame Jews is growing at an unprecedented rate among conspiratorialists, and particularly online and social media. X is a cesspool of racism. And in almost every case, these adversarial individuals falsely accuse Jews of what they themselves have done. They're all dishonest. They're ignorant. They're hypocrites. They are so far down the rabbit hole, they will never come to know or accept the conditions of the covenant, which means they will be excluded from it, and that's a good thing. It is, of course, good news that those who either relax or worship their God on Sundays will be stopped on the Shabbat, the Sabbath. It is all part of the promise of the seventh day, and I suspect that Yahowah will have one of his Malach messengers lift up one of the two tablets of stone that he engraved to validate his commitment to the Shabbat during the waning days of the time of Jacob's troubles, all to reinforce this point sometime over the next 4 to 7 years. And since this statement is about retribution, let it be known that Dowd encouraged us to rely on words rather than weapons. Words are better than fists. The lone exception is when it comes to curtailing the deliberate physical abuse of those we love. Since this is the most reasonable interpretation of this statement, and recognizing that the children of Yisrael are Yahweh's family, those who have abused Jews over the millennia are in a world of trouble. Now, considering how horrid we humans have been to one another over the past 6,000 years, without a single altruistic civilization to show for all of that time, it's truly astonishing that God endures the many for the sake of the few. And yet, for the likes of Dowd alone, Yahowah would have done it all, and he would do it again. The text reads, "Truly, when I look at your heavens, the universe, and the spiritual realm, the accomplishment of your fingers, when I look at the moon and the stars, which to reveal the benefits of the relationship you have fashioned in form, What is Enosh, mortal man, that by comparison you are mindful of him? And the Son of Man, that surely you take stock of him and you relate to him. Mizmowr 8:4. We'll conclude this evening's program on this statement because it conveys so much of what I've been trying to say all day as I survey the pretext for the 31st Mashal word picture. And what I've come to realize is the point that Dowd is making here, that one of the reasons that God chose to value his relationship with Dowd and to work with the likes of Abraham and Moshe, Dowd, of course, and his prophets, is that he is so much greater than we are, so far removed from us, not just in space-time, but in dimensions, in intellect, and in capability, knowledge, that for God to have a meaningful relationship with us, he must elevate us to the point that we begin to approximate his stature, which means we need to shed these bodies, be removed from this planet, and to have our souls encapsulated in light energy. And for us to be empowered and enriched and emancipated and enabled by an infinite extent to be such that we can relate directly with God. And prior to that, the only way that God can effectively communicate with us is through one of us. And so he's saying here, I understand that this great chasm between you and us. And he's asking, why in the magnitude of all that you've created would we even matter to you? And the answer is, we didn't matter to God before we were created. We didn't matter to God as he was creating the universe. We didn't matter to God as he was authoring life. We only began to matter to God when he conceived one of us and then another of us in his image for the purpose of engaging in a covenant relationship with him. And then we are more meaningful to him than the whole rest of the universe combined. But even then, it's a very delicate dance that God must engage in so as not to overwhelm us, to stack the deck for this instruction and game of life, if you will, such that it delivers a predetermined result, as opposed to having both of us be given the opportunity to engage or disengage from the covenant, to respect or disrespect our Creator. We've been afforded that opportunity, and it goes both ways. God can reject us, we can reject him, but God has chosen to display his accomplishments and to share them by forming a exceedingly important relationship with a mortal man and with a number of those who would also convey this message. And that he is exceedingly mindful, Zakar, of the most memorable of men, the very Son of Man, that surely you take stock of him, you relate to him. And not only is Dowd this man, but so are so many others who have taken stock of what Yahowah has to offer, who are not only responsive to his guidance and his teaching, but respectful of his name and reputation. It's a wonderful place for us to conclude this program. I'm glad that we didn't give up just because we got a brief shower. Delighted to be here, even as the sun has set now in the Caribbean Sea, to share this wonderful message from our God with you. Good evening.